Hi everybody, it's Hannah here with another spooky little video, and I just want to apologize if this lighting is kind of on the darker side, that it's not that clear. I'm sorry. And welcome to another spooky little video, and this might be a long one, so if you haven't already, put on some PJs and chillax, have some snacks, and let's jump into it. And I'm going to be reading 19 terrifying stories that read like horror fiction but are true. 1. This one is called My Friend's Parents Stumbled onto a fresh corpse left by Ted Bundy on their first date. It was near Halloween time when my friends and I were telling ghost stories. My friend said she was going to tell a story about her parents' first date. And she said she didn't like telling the story since it was actually true, but we found it pronded on her. To cut to the chase, the parents had spent a nice, if awkward, first date, and around the time that they would have said goodnight. The male in the situation, my friend's dad, suggested that they go on a midnight hike to Peru Canyon. He apparently knew the space, and he had gone a far amount of climbing area, so he drove up the mountain canyon, got out of the cars, and started hiking under the light of stairs since it was moonlight. At this point, the male was getting a bad feeling since the pathway ahead, which would pass under some trees, would be dark, and because it was getting quite late, he ignores the feeling and progress on. In later regions of the story, the female would say that she had felt something, the same feeling at what was probably the same time, though she didn't know the trail like he did. A minute later, the feeling came back to the male. He ignored it again and started walking a bit of the way into the trees when his foot hit something soft in the middle of the path. Under the trees, it was too dark to see what the soft thing was, and the feeling came back stronger than ever. Instead of finding what was on his foot had bumped into, he had the female both agreed that hightail it was out of there. Dang squirrels. Years later, after being married for some time, they were watching an interview of a serial killer named Ted Bundy. His response to a question asking him to describe the time that he felt the closest to being caught. He explained about the night that he lured a girl into Provo Canyon and had killed her and heard some people coming the trail. He explained how he hid in the trees just in time to catch some guy walking right into the body. For some reason, it turned around walking away. Friend's parents dribbled into the fresh crops. He left Ted on their first date. Whew. Number 2. My brother dreamed of John when has dead, and John was dead. When I was around 7, my grandmother took care of my baby, whose mother was a alcoholic and drug addict. This woman would bring her child, let him call him, let's call him John, to my grandmother's house and leave him there for for months at a time. Needless to stay, our family become very addict and thought him of him part of the family. His mother came to get him one night, and drunk, her boyfriend flips the car. John was in a coma for about 3 or 4 days. One night, my older brother wakes everyone in the house screaming and crying, saying that John is dead. Once my parents get him called down, he tells them that John came into his room crying, saying that he has to leave, but he is scared and wants my brother to come with him. While my parents are trying to convince my brother that it was just a dream, the phone rings and it is my uncle calling from the hospital, informed us that John had died. This happened over 30 years ago, but still gets goosebumps thinking about it. Whew. Number 3. All the doors in the house started slamming themselves open and close. I believe I lived in a party house. English beep up beep happen here on a lot nights, normal days, but you really don't want to be here alone. I'm the only roommate that can stomach aches, but then I've seen some really terrible things in my time. I was home alone one night, and I was certain of this because all my roommates were in Minneapolis for Gay Parade week. I was planning to have a party, but decided against it. Checked the house and locked up for the night. About midnight, I heard the dog whimpering at the door, and I got up and let him out. As he did his business, I thought I heard the door slam upstairs. I thought it was nothing but a stray breeze at first, but it was a pretty placid night. As I let the dog out, I heard a huge situation of suggestions of slams, and began to think it may be someone trying to beep with me. I grabbed a butcher knife and headed upstairs. When I got up there, all the doors were staying open, which was weird as beep, since roommates generally shut the doors when they were away. When I walked down the hall, I checked the bathroom door. I heard a loud crash from downstairs, and a moment later, the dog was shaken by and hid in the bathroom behind me. Now, more than a little freaked out, I went downstairs to investigate. I didn't see anything, so I stood still for a minute and found the corner of my eye. I saw a movement. I turned in time to catch my door slam in front of me, then flinging itself open. I right the beep out of there. Whew. Number 4. One time I woke up in the middle of the night to see two floating in the darkness in the corner of my room. As a boy, I was definitely afraid of the dark. I'm still always alert and alert when I'm traversing the darkness. One time I woke up in the middle of the night to see two eyes floating in the darkness in my corner of my room, like a dog's eyes in the dark. Thinking it was my dog, I shout to him, "Buster, come here, boy." It just sat there. "Buster, come on." Nothing. "Buster, come here right beepin' now." Nothing, just scared beepless. I leaned forward for the light switch and turned the light. I am alone in my room. I slept on the couch for a year and a half afterwards. Number 5. The rocking chair that was rapidly rocking and no one was sitting in it. Okay, on the subject of demons related stories, I'm athletic but still is creepy. My uncle is a pastor of a church in Oklahoma, and one of his closest buddies in youth ministers in the church in a neighborhood town. He had a wife, one daughter. Every Sunday mornings when his daughter was younger, around 5, 6 or so, she and his wife would get up really early, cook breakfast. One morning, the daughter saw the kitchen light turn on from her room and heard some of pots being moved around. She thought, "Why is Mom making breakfast without me?" So she got up, went to check, but it was about 4 a.m. and no one was in the kitchen and all the lights were off. She went to her parents' room and asked, "Mommy, why did you try cooking breakfast without me?" Her mom thought it was her in the kitchen making the noises. She woke up her husband, my uncle's friend, thinking someone was in the house. He grabbed an old aluminum basketball bat and walked into the dark house. He checked the kitchen, and besides some pots and pans being out, nothing seemed too greatly disturbed. And next to the kitchen is a reading room with a couch and a rocking chair. When he walked there, he could barely make out the rocking chair which is rapidly rocking with no one sitting in it. He jumped back, frightened, and grabbed a Bible sitting on the shelf and screamed, "My name is Jesus, leave my house." And the chair insists halt, nothing like ever. Ever happen again. I am not believer, but nonetheless creepy story. 6. I'm just not gonna read the titles because they're a little long, so I'm just gonna start jumping into the story and just letting you guys know. Number 6. Okay, on the subject. Wait a minute. I read that one. Number 7. On way back in 5th grade or so, I discovered a glamorous Pokemon-themed chat room through the wonders of Hulu. Within this chat room, there was maybe 15, regardless, general between the ages 12 and 16 or so. We had a great time role-playing characters and story tales. Anyway, I got to know a few people from there well enough to chat with them on IM or by phone, and a few of these friendships lasted a good 4 or 5 years. One of these guys was a little eccentric and loved creating monsters, model stories, stuff like uh, Godzilla, Spawn, whatever. He believed things like a Chupacabras, which I thoroughly was silly, but I didn't really care. He lived in Bonnies in some Midwest state, which all seemed like hick land to my young West Coast mind. After getting to know him pretty well and having a good 100 hours of conversation for the years, over the years, he finally relieved, released his lovely story. He told me sometimes he would black out and wake up and discover that he had or was still the process of hurting or tormenting animals and children. He had quite a few cousins and neighbors who lived nearby and apparently had killed some animals. When he relieved this to me, I felt sick inside. I love animals, and this information chilled me to the bone. I really hard hurt. It was really hard for him to tell me this, and he confessed that I was one of the only people who had ever be able to tell. When I was, then I got worried. Then I got worried. Someone in his family, or maybe a family friend, decided that he must be possessed by a demon, and that they perform an exorcism. They did it at night, of course, the dark room lit by candles, and he tied to the bed because they didn't know what the demon would react. He was choking up by the scrub part in his voice. In his voice, quivering because he was so emotional and terrified at this part of the story. He described a pretty creepy process, but didn't. But the worst part was that the end. He had heard something hit the floor under the bed when the demon left the body, and then something scrabbled across the floor and out of the room in the darkness, leaving claw marks in the wood floor. He totally and completely seriously about this and how I cure him, and he didn't hurt things anymore. I, as in the sane person who would do, noped right the F out of the situation. Whew. Number 8. In my hometown, there was a true story about a guy in my neighborhood that was going into people's homes and stealing crap and killing pets. He made one strike a night, and he was super careful, so he never got caught. On like a ninth or 10th night, they caught this guy and was my neighbor. He was 17 years old, and he did it for the thrill. Whew. Number 9. My grandmother's entire life, she had a recurring nightmare. In this nightmare, she would be walking down along the dark way, turned to the left door, and see something terrible. She'd always wake up for seeing what this is. In her 40s, her husband, my dad, and my aunt were on vacation. She booked a hotel at the last minute, so they're having to get 2 rooms with two twin beds on the opposite sides of the floor. My dad wakes up around 3 a.m. and can automatically tell something's not right. He calls out the darkness, "Dad?" No response. He turned on the bed light. "Dad?" He says a little louder this time. Still no response. Getting worried, his slides out of bed and shakes his father. He doesn't wake up. My dad ran down the hotel to my grandma's room and started banging on the door. My grandma worriedly opens the door and my dad shouts, "There's something wrong with my dad." He leads her to the hallway, a long hallway to the last door on the left. My grandma reaches the door, turns to the left, and see her husband dead in the room. Heart attack. She never had a dream again. 10. My 4-year-old daughter was supposedly asleep when I heard noises coming from her upstairs bedroom. I tried to listen, but I could not make it out what what was being said. I approached the room and went and she stopped talking, thinking I alarmed her, and went into the room. And at the time, she was sharing it with her 3-year-old sister. I was walking in and saw a 4-year-old sitting on the bed smiling, and she said, "Everything okay?" She said, "Fine." She said, "Fine," but her sister said they were keeping her up. I asked who. My 4-year-old said sorry, but what she said was talking. When I asked her who she was talking to, my 3-year-old sat up, said, "The girl in the window. She said you were coming." After I beat a brick, I asked who was the girl was, and they both said the girl come up standing in front of the window at night and talks to them. Not knowing what to say, I said okay, tucked them in, and hung around outside their door. And the next day, I asked about the door. They said that she came back and was mad. I waited a few days and asked again. My 4-year-old girl was in the window, still mad. I forgot about it for about a week. When my wife said, "Who are the girls talking to upstairs?" Freaked out, I ran upstairs. Both girls were sitting under the window looking up. They turned and looked at me, asked if I wanted to meet the girl. When they turned around, disappointed, they said the girl left. It was been about 5 years since, and I had not heard a girl in the window again. 11. When I was about 11, some friends and I were having a slumber party, and we all snuck out of the house in the middle of the night and went to the park about a block away. We had been there and at least an hour or so when I thought I saw a large shadowy figure about 100 feet away, lurking in the shadow under trees. We all turned to look and stared at the shadow direction for about 5 minutes, trying to make it out. Right about when we decided we were seeing things, the figure started running up to us top speed. We jumped and ran back to the house as fast as we could go and lock the door. We could hear someone moving around outside the house, and then we began tapping on the window. We couldn't wake up anyone since we would have to admit that we snuck out. We spent the night huddling together in the middle of the living room waiting to be murdered. Luckily, we weren't. Number 2. My mom grandparents, aunt, uncles, and several of the neighborhoods all swore we saw an UFO hovered around my grandparents' house in the late 1960s. They all just hung over in the backyard, silently spinning, expected for a faint whizzing sound for a minute or two, with all the sorts of colors and ringing. My mom and grandma said they remember the television radios in the living room turning on the full blast, getting transmissions and broadcasts from the other countries, and the languages and applications in the kitchen were rattling. My uncle said that it was hanging right outside of his bedroom window on top of the floor, and that he was too scared to move, just stood there in the window staring. Another time, I'm pretty sure I saw a UFO with my mom behind our house about 10 years ago. Our backyard is basically a mile of farmland, and there was a bright lighting bouncing in the middle of the field. Then it was shot up and was gone. Whew. Number 3. A friend explained to me that while she took sleeping pills. Apparently, she lived in GA. They bought an older house, rich family, very nice home, which had some character. She claimed to find some old purple dinosaur crawling up a space while her dad was fixing some plumbing. Played with her dino for a few weeks. Always slept with it in bed, among other toys. One day she woke up to staring at her, standing in her chest, in a different modeling / position than when she had found it, or it had been in a few past weeks. It sat aside. Then the next 3 weeks, same thing happened. Didn't matter if she put it on the floor, in the dresser, or anything. One day she locked it up, couldn't sleep. Here, the drawers unlocked, open, and slammed shut. First steps, and it was back on her chest. She was scared, so scared. She pretended to sleep while she shifted and sat on her chest and watched her sleep. She told her mom the next day and didn't believe her until she allowed to lock the man in their room. Same thing. They couldn't have. They moved to another house after the paranormal things started happening around the house. The dino stayed in the original house and buried, if I remember right, for a year and a half. One day I appeared to their new house just standing like they found in a kitchen corner. Got rid of good. Got rid of it good. I think they burned it and ditched it in the river. I never seen it again. Friend has a repeating nightmare. That goes away with the pills. She's older now and can't drink because of the pills. Said she made numerous emergency hospital trips and finding scratches on her body. The hospital claims from night terrors. Not now. Maybe I'm just a freak about scary stories or beeping toys that talk. But the serious on her face and the terror that she welled in her eyes, I was sold. Not sure of bull beep, but I believe. Rather I want to or not, scary. The kid you not, the terrible sleeping. She current house clarification. She was 13 and the dino happened when she was 10 years old. Now, whew, number 14, and there's 14, 15, 16, 17. There's a few more after this one, and I'm on 14, I believe. Yep. I'm on 14, and there's 19 out of them, so. When my cousin was around 7 years old, in his room was in the basement. The basement level was half underground and half above ground. His room had a window and his bed was right next to the window. One night, out of the blue, he wakes up and opens One night, he wakes up and opens his eyes, and there's a man crouching right outside of the window staring at him. He didn't know what to do, so he just froze for a second, then turned over in the bed and turned his back to the guy and eventually fell asleep. Why he didn't run screaming to his parents' room is something I never understand. I went on for a while. On random nights, the strange would come and stare at him through the window. Something he would actually tap on the glass on his finger, and on the opposite wall of the window was a mirror. So the one night when my cousin noticed the strange was there, and he turned over in bed so he wouldn't have to look at the guy. The stranger's shine of flashlight bounced on the beam on his mirror to illustrate my cousin's face. I can still see you. But the worst part was the night the stranger finally got bold and began to push the window and if it would open. But luckily the window was locked. To this day, my cousin had no idea who the guy was or what he wanted or what he would have done if the window was unlocked that night. And to this day, he still has not told his parents about this. He's 31 now. 15. Paranormal activity is weird to me. I discourage it from all scientifically standpoint, but I grown up to the house where I can just explain the stuff that happened. So I just tried not to think about it like a universe has no edge. This house. So it was an old house in New Zealand. My family lived there for about 5 years, and there was so many haunted things that occur during this time frame. We had a normal door slamming when there was no breeze. Many times my sister and I would hear footsteps from the hallway when there was nothing there. One night my family has woken up by a smash. We all went to where we thought the source of the noise came from and found vases smashed on the floor in the middle of the bathroom. It had been sitting there sitting on the windowsill above the sink, and fancy where you if you fell in where you smashed into the sink, but I had managed to pass by the sink and smashed about 7 feet in the middle of the room. My mother often claimed to woken up and felt someone breathing on her face. My biggest scare was I was woke up one night in my room. My bed was in the middle of the room. I could distinctly hear a man breathing heavily if he was lying next to my I had in my bed. I was 7 years old, and it was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced. I had a few asthma attacks previously and was trying to tell myself it was me breathing weird. But after holding my breath for a long time, I could still hear the sky breathing. I could bring myself to look at the floor, but luckily I was not between me and the door. It took me about 10 minutes to build the courage to get out of bed and run and screaming, crying to my parents. I slept in my parents' bed that night. Number 16. My high school teacher told us a story about his friends living in Oriska. The friend, met a girl at Walmart. They talked and hit it off pretty well. She was very nice religious girl. Accidentally like the one of the he wanted to be with. They exchanged numbers. He called. They gave a long conversations deep into the night. They go on dates. She is a generous, nice girl. She ended up every night phone conversation with a prayer. We thank our Father or something like that. The guy is completely submitted. She finally calls him to come to her house 7:31 Saturday night. She tells him to come there with exactly 7:30, no minute later. She says that if he is ever 1 minute late, she will break up with him. This guy was a little league baseball coach with a game that day. The game was supposed to be a few hours before he accepted the offer. What was the score? One day, the game was one of the games. The game went into overtime, or whatever they call it in baseball. It went longer than expected. The coach, was getting nervous, but still had plenty of time. The game ended a little late. About three of the kids' parents hadn't arrived yet, and he had to drop them off. Panicking, he really didn't want to miss the chance with a nice girl. He tells him to hop into the car with speeds off. After quickly dropping the first two kids, he decided the kid was too far off, so he leaves him on the road and begs him to walk home. Yet very douchey moved, I know. He rushes home, showers, gets dressed in a hurry, and tries to go to the girl's home ASAP. He arrives to her house at 7:35, 5 minutes late. A woman in her mind, 40s, comes out and tells him, Clarence, the nice girl who called him over, said you are late and wants to go want you to go away. He dejects and goes back home. A few days, or rather than the next day, I think. Later, he sees a local news. He sees the house and looks familiar. It was the girl's house. The police are leading a handcuffed woman off the house. It is the 40-year-old woman had spoken to him earlier, behind the girl he was dating. He was shocked that the headline was read child kidnapper or something like that. He expected the police to visit him soon as well, because he was dating the girl. Soon as expected, the police officer comes to his door uh, and asks if he is named. The guy is nervous to know his rights, and he asked if he should get a lawyer or not. The officer tells him that he is legally not allowed to tell what happened, but the moral obligation. This is where the story gets creepy. The police says the woman got arrested were engaging in a human trafficking. In their home, they found a missing children remains. There was blood all over the walls and jars and blood labels with the names of missing kids. There was an empty jar had dudes' names on it. Turns out the girl invited on a date to her house at 7:30 to kill him and brutal human body. The brutal apparently had to expect the prices timming, and he being late saved him for being brutally scarfed. Ooh, almost done at number 17. As somebody who is caught between a strong Christian Southern Baptist evening unburning and recognizing all from the fun of with current views, I've always wondered what the hell happened in this night. In Beaumont, Texas, there was a place called Sorrow or Bragg Road with some degree of paranormal history. I've gone a number of times with my family, and sometimes you see a little something and other times you don't. However, one night we had headed out, there was the difference. Other groups piled into the truck for this. I was probably 16 or so at the time. It was me and my stepdad at the time, in the truck bed of my brother, mother, 2 cousins, my aunts in the cabin. We all decided to go to Bragg Road because it was a happenstance occasion. We all happened to be in town on Wednesday night, where none of us had to go anywhere the next day. We figured what nobody would be out there, which tends to improve your chances of seeing something. The way things work at that road is you drive slowly slow down the 1-lane dirt road, and then if you want to go on a double back, you drive it again. On our first run through, we didn't see anything even remotely paranormal, though we did pass a sketchy group of young, college-aged men and women who pulled over into a small clear in the swamp and were leaving their car. They gave us some nasty looks and if they were intriguing. Well, we decided to drive back on the road. Whoopsies. Road the second time to see if we could see. By this time, we have forgotten entirely about the other people. We got into a little campsite, and we've done a remodeling, so to speak, they had erected some kind of pole, which a pentagram painted on a fixed sign where we were standing around a campfire talking softly to themselves. Remember those nasty looks we got earlier? We got them hundred-folded then. So we passed a creepy group. My stepdad and I being the only two truly face to face with them. Not 2 minutes later, we suddenly start hearing crackling noises. My dad pushes my arm exotically and points out the tree pot, saying, "Holy beep, look." Lo and behold, there was a bluish noise motes of lights about 2 or 3 feet in diameter rapidly fluttered about the treetops. We stopped for a moment, hovering over 20 feet above us. Freaking out harder. I don't know where I left it. They stopped for a moment, hovering between 20 feet above us before suddenly discriminating, freaking out harder than I had ever since. My stepdad and I began to window, screaming, "Drive, drive!" My aunt, the driver, stops the car and asks what we were freaked out about. So we had our best out hanging out. We suddenly take off 10 miles per hour about to 50 miles per hour in a narrow one-line dirt road. The lights continue following us, getting closer with all the time making this noise. I can't really describe this anything but disturbing. It had some high-pitched ethereal quality to it, but I just felt like an alien. When we got to the end of the road, we all bailed to receive cars ASAP. We regrouped at gas stations for a few miles away, compared stories. Everyone saw the same thing, heard the same thing, same noises, and I believe we don't believe to go back since. Oh no. There we go. Number 18. Okay. About Time to document this. A true story that happened to me and my two friends hanging out at my house. We were about 15, 16 years old. We were hanging out early that night, skateboarding on my driveway, and we decided to walk in my property where there was dried out pond. We took out airsoft guns, flashed my German Shepherd flashlights, and my German Shepherd, probably just to humor each other because we were trying to get scared. Anyways, it was about midnight at the dried out pond, and one of my friends started acting funny. He was starts going on about, I summon you demon to haunt these lands, etc. I just figured he was trying to freak us all out. Freak us out. Well, while we were walking back my property, my house was there a dirt road. All of a sudden, I heard both of them screaming bloody murder. I'd look in this tree behind the fence, lying a huge fence, and a huge shadow, like a size of a crow, jumps out of the tree and seems to run off 30 feet in less than a second right at me. Before I know it, I was laying on my back on the ground, and my German Shepherd um, barked 5 times in her life, barking loudly and running off the distance. We all ran to my house, tried to calm down. Nothing else happened that night. I still don't know what to think about this. It will always chill me a bone to the bone. But what happened? Whew. And the last and final one. I don't believe the ghost stories or haunted houses, but I believe this house I lived in this house for a year, and I swear to God there was an evil beep going on in this house. For starters, there was a lot of folklore about the house. Back in the day, it was a tented house for hookers. After that, it was a trap house which got rapidly by a DEA, confirmed by the landlord. Allegedly, they found a dead body, four keys, four keys of heroin, 5 pounds of crack, etc., etc., etc. After that, although the house was vanished for a few years, the landlord put it back on the market. And when we moved in, upon the touring house, my roommates and I found it strange rapidly in writing the walls, most which was covered by a yellowed, peeling flower wallpaper. There was a cowbell everything. It looked like some bums that had been squatting there for for their time to time. Being four dumb broken beep college kids, we took and said let's get it just kitschy. One of one of one move-in day, I found the broken end and crunched in the corner of my room, as well as some blood stains on the floor I hadn't noticed during the tour. It should be noted that my room was the smallest and the size of the closet, with a tiny window which looked about a brick of a wall and a door that couldn't stay closed. A noticeable dumped in the middle of the room. Now the following things happened repeatedly. One roommate heard some loud barking noise. Another roommate wake up find objects had been moved from his room. We all saw people who weren't there walking around, especially at night. The following things that happened braced ourselves. We found a knife. No one knows who it was or where it came from. It just appeared. The window opened by itself. We heard some walking around roofs. Wasn't there just like scary things that she just starts listing off like scary things that happened. It became a joke. This was a possessed and all the bull beep. We haven't even made a drinking game of the even eventually. But the truth is we all had a horrible sleep problem and nightmares where we whole year we lived there. We got to the point where the roommate basically moved in with his girlfriend out of a week just so he wouldn't have sleep in our house anymore. On top of everything, the negativity energy is the house turned all against us and wrecked our mental health, which started getting better as soon as we moved out. I don't know. Like I said, I don't believe in ghost stories, but I'll be demanded if I didn't spend a year in hell. Well, I hope you guys like this video. If you do, please like, please subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow with another video. Bye.